Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. What message have Haryana and Maharashtra sent to the Congress party, and what steps does Congress need to take to revive and become an active opposition? Those are two key issues I should raise today with Congress's best known and most thoughtful MP, Shashi Tharoor. Shashi Tharoor, there's no doubt that in Maharashtra the party has not done as badly as the exit polls said it would, and in Haryana you've done much better than the prediction was. Now, were you surprised by that? Or were you expecting it?
No, actually, I was not, because I was talking to people who were not excessively influenced by the exit polls. In fact, a close friend who's from Haryana told me this was utter balderdash, these stories of 3 seats and so on. His estimate was 25 to 30. We ended up with 31. And I must say that that's what I was saying. I mean, I was in Kerala most of this time, but I said to my party workers and colleagues and friends there, but don't be surprised if we do much better in Haryana than the polls suggest. Maharashtra, you're right, we did do better. I think the worst that can be said is we could have done better still, perhaps.
But were you surprised by Maharashtra, even if not by Haryana?
Well, I was, frankly, we were expecting the defeat. So to that degree, there was no surprise. But the fact that we did as well as we did is immensely reassuring. I would say that Congress did about as well as we could have hoped. NCP did a lot better than perhaps even the pollsters had anticipated, and cumulatively we've done well together.
Let me then ask you this, because this in a sense is a key question. Do you see the results as a sign that Congress is reviving, or simply as a sign that in fact people are now desperately looking for an alternative to the BJP? And the two, by the way, are not the same.
No, they're not the same, but I would say that in fact the Congress is beginning to revive. I would certainly agree that we've been through a bit of a slump, which really occupied a few months after the Lok Sabha defeat. And therefore, when I say beginning to revive, the process of picking ourselves up and moving forward has just started with these elections, and we will go further on. BJP actually can look around and say, look, our vote share hasn't gone down colossally in Maharashtra. In fact, slightly gone up.
Everyone's vote share in Maharashtra has gone down, to be honest.
No, but the thing is that because they contested fewer seats, in relation to the number of seats they contested, they actually can say they haven't done badly. Whereas last time, as you remember, everyone ran individually, all 4 parties.
Let's
this time there are 2 alliances.
Let me put this to you. In May 2019, when the national elections were held, there was a widespread belief that political issues like national security, like illegal immigrants, Pakistan and terror had trumped economic concerns such as unemployment, rural distress, demonetization and GST. Now, do you see signs of that changing?
Yes, I think there is, first of all, a difference between state elections and national elections. So what we're seeing here, I think, is also the fact that the BJP is attempting to make this campaign all about 370 and Balakot and national security and the Prime Minister is beginning to reach its sell-by date. And I think that you're going to see this getting worse over the next few years. People are going to say, what have you done for us in our states? And I think local issues will dominate, as they've done in the various by-elections that took place. And I think what you're going to find with these is that unless the BJP has something concrete to point to locally, they will find that their national appeal is eroding in state elections. In Maharashtra, my understanding from the people I've spoken to and what I've sensed, it is not that the BJP government did anything particularly right. It's that they didn't do anything spectacularly wrong. And people didn't feel they had enough reasons to vote against them. So that's why I said I don't think the BJP has done as badly as they could have.
But you do believe that we're reaching a point when economic issues and concerns, the bread and butter issues that affect people's daily lives, will begin to take more importance rather than appeals to nationalism or talk about 370 or NRC?
That's certainly our belief and our hope, I might add, because we wanted to take the Lok Sabha campaign in that direction, and the government effectively derailed it with Pulwama and Balakot in particular. I think that in future, this is going to be the main theme of our approach. And I actually, in my own campaign, ask voters quite bluntly, are you better off than you were 5 years ago? Has this government brought any benefits into your life? And certainly in South India, the answer was a resounding no. Perhaps in the north, in some areas, some of their last-minute welfare measures like PM Kisan and the gas cylinder and the toilets actually struck a chord with people there. But frankly, we have all of those in the south, and it wasn't a big issue.
Let's now focus on how Congress performed in those two key states, Maharashtra and Haryana. Let's start with Haryana. There's no doubt that the change in party leadership galvanized your party, but it only happened literally 6 weeks before voting. Why was it left so late?
Well, I mean, frankly, you're asking a question, as the American soldiers like to say, above my pay grade. I wasn't privy to the decision, so I can't answer it. But what I can say is that there's a natural sense of when you've made a generational change, you're reluctant to change back again. Now, that's happened in Haryana. It's happened at the national level too. So perhaps we're rethinking all of that. But the truth is, at that time, we had, after many years and very successful years of Mr. Huda's leadership, the Congress president had named a younger person. I think the feeling had been that he would be given a long enough rope to deliver. In this particular instance, the infighting within the party, the disagreements, the problems, could only have been resolved by making a clear-cut choice. And the Congress president today said, the choice I'm going to make is the other one.
But the truth is that Ghulam Nabi Azad, the General Secretary in charge of Haryana, has publicly lamented on television that the change didn't happen 6 months earlier. Now, if the General Secretary knows it should happen 6 months earlier, if he's lamenting the fact it didn't, why didn't it?
Well, 6 months ago is precisely when we were going through all these ructions towards the end of the Lok Sabha. You see, we went through a phase when Rahul Gandhi announced his resignation, but the party leadership remained in denial. That is, the working committee never accepted that resignation. For about 4 weeks, even 5, we were all in a kind of state of limbo where he had resigned and yet not yet resigned, sort of thing. And then he released his letter, making it very clear he wasn't going to take his resignation back. And then we lost another 4 weeks or so while the working committee fished around for a solution, another another process.
What you're suggesting is that the confusion between and within the Gandhi family itself, mother, daughter and son, over the presidency meant that critical decisions that were needed in Congress's interests weren't taken.
No, I didn't name the Gandhi family, Karan, you did. No, I just said that the Congress leadership...
But that's what it amounts to.
No, there's a working committee, for example. They could easily have either announced a process or named a name or named an interim, but they were floundering for a while, and in that process we ended up without clear direction about anything for a couple of months.
Without naming who's responsible, would you accept this was negligence on the part of Congress?
Look, I think we were all stunned by the scale of our defeat. I mean, I must say, nobody I knew...
Stunned into negligence?
Apparently, because nobody I knew was expecting anything like this.
Okay, I'll accept that phrase. Stunned into negligence is probably the correct way to describe it, because the truth is, Haryana was a state waiting for you to pick it up and win. But instead, you've gifted it to the BJP.
That is a reproach that I've heard before. All I can say is that we haven't entirely gifted it. We've salvaged a reasonable...
You've gifted it. You aren't in power. You could have been.
Well, could have been is very difficult to say. That Mr. Modi and his party have won an awful lot of elections.
Had you had a new leadership 6 months early, as Ghulam Nabi Azad has publicly said, had the distractions about the presidency not deterred Congress, and let's leave out the question who, into taking decisions that were needed, you would have been in power. As you said, stunned into negligence.
Well, would have been in power presumes voter intention. All I can say is that we could have perhaps had a few weeks more of what turned out to be a very effective campaign that reached people.
You know, it's not just Ghulam Nabi Azad who says what I'm saying. Bhupinder Singh Hooda said it publicly. Kamal Nath has said it publicly. I mean,
I'm not disagreeing. All I'm saying is that from the point of view of might have been, you can say whatever you like, but all we know is how people actually did vote, and that's what we are left with today.
Let's come to Maharashtra. That's another state where, compared to 2014, your performance has improved, and this is despite the fact your party is riddled with disaffection, with people leaving your party and defecting, and divisions. On top of that, you fought a lackluster campaign, and the Gandhis hardly featured at all. So would you accept that in Maharashtra, your divisions, your lack of organization and preparation, and your poor campaign effectively gave a free run to the BJP and the Shiv Sena?
Well, free run is again stretching it a bit. I mean, there were some important changes and differences between the last time and
An easy
this time.
ride.
An easier ride than perhaps they deserve. But as I said, they hadn't done anything spectacularly wrong to bring about an anti-incumbency. And that was always going to be working in their favor, however effective our campaign had been.
Hang on a second. I'm going to dispute that.
One second. The management of the economy, which is in many ways a central government policy, has been bad throughout the country, including in Maharashtra.
Those are critical issues that people say had Congress touched on forcefully, you could have changed the mood of the electorate. But you didn't. And I'll name those issues. The PMC bank crisis,
Yes.
unemployment, rural distress, and the collapse of the auto sector, which in Maharashtra is more severe than it is in any other state. Now, if you'd actually brought those up in your campaigns and done so forcefully, you'd have established an immediate rapport with the people of Maharashtra. More importantly, you'd have established a check to Mr. Modi's otherwise winning appeal in terms of nationalism and Article 370. You did neither.
Those are the very issues we raised. In fact, as somebody who was receiving all the material the INC was putting out.
It was Sharad Pawar who raised them at rallies. You didn't even have a joint rally with the NCP. Let's be honest. And when Rahul Gandhi did hold rallies, he spent an awful lot of time talking about Rafale, which is an issue that is outdated. Its expiry date has long passed. These other issues were issues that would have established a connect with the Maharashtrian people. And you let them down. In fact, you let yourselves down.
Well, the BJP certainly managed to bring about this entire Savarkar distraction at the same time. They did, I would say, as usual, run a campaign that skirted the key issues.
And your party fell into the Savarkar trap. Dr. Manmohan Singh went public to say that Indira Gandhi had given him a commendation, that Indira Gandhi had given a personal donation of 11,000, and as a result, it seemed as if you were in fact the B team as far as Savarkar is concerned. Yet on the economic issues that I mentioned, you would have had the BJP on the back foot and you would have established an immediate rapport with the Maharashtrian people who are suffering.
Dr. Manmohan Singh went to Maharashtra to hold a press conference on the economy. See, you're being a bit unfair about all this.
Is he your best campaigner?
He is the most authoritative voice on the Indian economy.
At a press conference, which is where very few people hear him except those who are watching on television, and he spoke in English, so he would not have been heard by those who speak Marathi or Hindi. Let's be honest, at your rallies, these issues didn't come up. Sharad Pawar brought them up forcefully. He spoke through the rain in Uday Bhosle's constituency in one applause.
And won the seat too.
There was nothing similar from Congress, which is why I'm saying, in Maharashtra, once again, you gave an easy ride.
Well, look, and the grounds for reproach, I'm sure, I'm quite certain that the top leadership will be looking at all of this very carefully to draw lessons from it.
Will they? Because the finger of responsibility and blame points at them. They didn't do it after the national elections, and 5 months have passed. What are the chances they're going to do it now? Particularly when this time there's an improvement in performance.
Yeah, I mean, the point is there is an improvement in performance and there is something to be celebrated. But to understand why we did it well and why we did badly is an exercise we do need to undertake everywhere. Whether it's a by-election in one constituency or whether it's a state election in a rather big state like Maharashtra. I mean, I do want to say that the points you raised, from PMC to the auto sector to agricultural distress, the problems of farmers, these are issues which were raised in various parts of the campaign and indeed partly explain our victories because we won on the basis of those issues. Many of our seats in rural areas really reflect the people's discontent with the management of the agrarian sector by the BJP. But the BJP, as I said, was not perceived as having administered the state so badly, having had so many problems that they needed to be turfed out. And so the anti-incumbency factor was never quite enough for us to
That's not
explore.
what Jitendra Awad, a key leader of your ally, the NCP, says. On television on Friday night, he went public to say if Congress had raised these issues more forcefully, if better rallies had been held, if the Gandhis had been involved more often and more intensely, you would have had 10 to 15 seats more. And 10 to 15 seats more for Congress could have meant a very different outcome in Maharashtra. Now your allies are saying
not a very
this,
different
not me.
outcome because there are 288 seats at stake and so we wouldn't
Yeah,
have
but those
actually
10 or
come to that
15 could have
outcome.
come from the BJP tally and brought them down. So you would have gone up and they'd have come down. What I'm saying is your allies are critical of you.
No, I think that all of this will have to be sorted. I mean, the fact is the people on the ground, and I wasn't on the ground myself, I was in Kerala, I'm the last person to challenge the wisdom of people on the ground who saw things the way they saw them. The fact is we are where we are, and my intent is to look forward.
Okay. I want to look forward because that really is the object of this interview. You're a thoughtful person. You're one of the few politicians in your party who does actually think and is prepared to express and talk. What are the key lessons Congress should learn from the Maharashtra and the Haryana experience?
Well, look, very clearly we have an overall lesson to learn for the next 5 years or the next 4.5, and that is about getting our organization energized. There are various ways in which this can be done, clearly, but the perception that the Congress party springs to life when there's an election, and in fact very often very close to election day, but in many parts of the country remains moribund between, that perception has to be completely wiped out. And it can only be done by energizing the party at every single level. Now, there are obvious ways of doing this. One is, of course, organizational reform and streamlining. Another is specific campaigns on issues. And I think that one of the conversations that I've certainly had with the Congress president was about perhaps greater synergy between the stands we take in Parliament.
When you say Congress president,
I mean the present Congress president, Sonia Gandhi, was that we do need greater synergy between what the stands we take in Parliament on certain issues and what our PCCs and DCCs should be taking on the streets. The example I gave her was the RTI issue, where we actually mounted a very strong and effective opposition in the Lok Sabha to a bill the government was trying to pass off as a routine technical amendment. And it wasn't. It hollowed out the soul of the RTI by completely compromising the autonomy of the commissioners. And my point was, this is something that affects ordinary people. They're the ones who are going to lose the right to
and so you should have taken this campaign to the streets.
Exactly.
And
but
that didn't happen.
Unfortunately, the debate on RTI happened during this leadership vacuum we talked about earlier, and as a result, there was no direction.
So Congress needs to be more active on the streets. You need to be communicating more directly with people. You need to be doing much more to make people aware of what the Modi government is doing, which is actually not in the interests of the people.
Precisely.
Okay, I'll come in a moment's time to what you hinted at, the need for organizational change. But let me first put two other things to you. In Maharashtra, the NCP today has 10 seats more than Congress, or to put it differently, they have more than 20% more seats than you.
Yeah.
Now, traditionally, you've looked upon the NCP as the junior partner in the alliance. Would you accept you're the junior partner today and you have to recognize it?
I think that's a fair conclusion to draw, and certainly, the NCP has a very tall leader in the shape of Shashi Tharoor, who, as you rightly pointed out, impressed one and all with his campaigning and with his personal commitment to doing so. And I think we should certainly, work closely together. I personally feel that there's almost no rational reason for some time now for the two to be two separate parties in the first place. I think really we don't have
except for the fact that the NCP is reluctant to merge.
Well, I'm not. It's not. Again, it's above my pay grade. I'm just as somebody who, as you kindly said, thinks about these things. I've often wondered if the issue on which the NCP broke away has ceased to be relevant. Why are we still functioning separately?
You began your answer very importantly. I'm just re-emphasizing that there is a need for Congress to realize that now the relationship in Maharashtra with Congress and the NCP has changed. They are not the junior partner, you are.
Well, I think in terms of the Assembly, no question about it. But in terms of presence right across the state, I don't think the Congress feels in any way diminished.
Even in terms of Lok Sabha seats, I think they have 4 more than you.
From Maharashtra.
From Maharashtra. Yeah. So whether it's Lok Sabha or the Assembly, you are the junior partner.
So as I said, in terms of legislative seats, yes. But you see, a party is actually more than its legislative presence. No one would have written off Mayawati's BSP when she had 0 seats in Parliament, because she still had an organizational presence and a structure.
I'm not talking about your presence nationwide. I'm talking about the situation in Maharashtra. But in Maharashtra,
even if we have fewer victories, we still have a very wide footprint.
No doubt. But the NCP footprint is clearly wider, and it brings home more seats both at the Vidhan Sabha level and the Lok Sabha level.
I contest that it's wider. I think they've done very well. A number of their victories are concentrated in certain areas that were seen to be Mr. Pawar's strongholds. But our footprint, going from the cities, from Mumbai all the way to the edge of Vidarbha, I think our presence is certainly, in the Maharashtra context, more significant.
The paradox is that your presence, if you claim, and I'm saying it's your claim because I'm not sure it's correct, is wider, doesn't deliver anything like as many seats. But leave that aside. I want to put a second issue to you. Your party has performed better in Maharashtra, in Haryana, and even, to be honest, in the by-polls, when the Gandhis actually played a very minimal role, if any at all. Isn't that a clear sign that Congress can survive without the Gandhis and actually can even improve without the Gandhis?
Oh, come on. I think there you're being unfair, because there's no denying the appeal amongst the general public, the voting public, that members of the Gandhi family have.
Hang on a second. They weren't there campaigning. Sonia didn't campaign at all. Rahul held just 7 rallies altogether. And by the way, at a critical time, when the campaign was underway, he left the country.
Look, as far as that's concerned, these were still state assembly elections, and local leaders were the ones who had to come to the fore, and so they did. But I'm not denying that we could have done a lot of these things better.
But let me put this to you. In November, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, and now this month, Haryana, Maharashtra and the by-polls both have shown that the Indian people have more trust and faith in the regional and state leadership of Congress than in your national leadership.
Sure.
How do you agree?
No, I'm not saying that no, in those state elections, the state leadership mattered decisively, is what you're saying. That I agree with. That's what I said, is sure.
Does that worry you? Because it actually raises question marks about the ability of your national leadership to appeal. Your state leadership is much more effective. They are able to win elections.
But I think that's actually to the credit of the Congress party, because the BJP's over-dependence on Mr. Modi, who then names ciphers as chief ministers who no one had heard of previously practically, because they are dependent on him, that is not necessarily a model that other parties should be aspiring to. I think it's very good that the Congress has credible state leaders.
Absolutely. And the point I'm making is that therefore, the Congress's dependence on the Gandhis has now clearly diminished. You can do without them, as I said. In fact, you can do better without them, because Maharashtra and Haryana have shown that.
Well, I certainly wouldn't say that, for example, in Kerala, where the appeal of the Gandhi family remains very high, or in many other parts of the country. And I contest the conclusion you've drawn simply because the proposition is not really seriously tested. These are people who Congress voters, Congress-inclined people still admire very greatly.
Let me put it like this. If you look at the by-polls for a moment, you've done better in Punjab, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and even in Gujarat. Isn't this a clear sign that you need to give a freer hand to your local state leadership, you need to give a freer hand to your state chief ministers, and there should be less remote controlling from Delhi?
But I already think there is less remote controlling from Delhi. I think that the chief ministers in office...
That's only because the Gandhis are weak and not able to remote control.
No, you can't have it both ways. You're implying on the one hand that there should be less remote control, and then you say there already is less.
But that's less remote control because they're unable to control. When they are in a position of strength, they have their finger on the button all the time.
Now, the way the party works, once a chief minister is named, in which of course the High Command plays a very decisive role, once the chief minister is named, he or she is the chief minister and has the authority to exercise all the power that comes with it.
Let's be honest. Look at the way Amarinder Singh had to suffer over Navjot Singh Sidhu, who clearly was not just a recalcitrant member of his cabinet, but one who was probably disobedient as well. And yet he wasn't able to sack him for weeks, if not months, because Navjot Singh Sidhu had gone and made contact with the Gandhis in Delhi. And those pictures were released of Rahul and Priyanka with Navjot Singh Sidhu just when everyone knew that Sidhu had a problem with Amarinder Singh. And what was the message? Amarinder Singh, we're tying your hands behind your back. It was only later.
Who prevailed in the end? Come on.
Only because by then the Gandhis as a family and their control over Congress had collapsed. That's why Amarinder acted.
They certainly haven't collapsed. I can assure you, as a member of the party, they're very much in charge. And let me also assure you that in the end, the right thing, as it were, in terms of giving respect and authority to the chief ministers in the states has prevailed throughout, not just in Punjab, in Madhya Pradesh.
The Gandhis who do the right thing in the end after doing everything else before that.
No, I didn't. Karan, you can't keep putting words in my mouth.
I'm not.
And conducting an interview. I mean, the truth is, I'm just saying to you that the state chief ministers are given all due respect by the Congress party, and certainly in my interactions with them, I don't get the impression that they feel in any way diminished by the High Command.
Let's come to what you hinted at a moment ago, and we didn't talk about it then, but I said I'd bring it up later, the need for organizational change. Now, it's 5 months since Rahul Gandhi first said he wanted to resign, and you haven't got a proper full-time Congress president in place. Isn't it now a priority? If this party is going to revive, don't you need immediately and expeditiously a full-time proper president?
Yeah, well, I think Sonia Gandhi says, first of all, that she is full-time, that she is not in any way a part-time president. She may be interim in the sense of the duration of her stint in office, but she's exercising full powers and taking full responsibility and seeing people and making decisions and
does that
signing
mean
papers
there's
and all
no
of that.
need for someone to take a
No,
full-time
there
term?
is,
Because as
because
long as you call her interim, it's known that she's not there for a full term.
No, not a full term. I said full time. That is, she's working as hard as she did when she was the full term president.
But don't you need a full-term president?
Yes, of course we do, and I think she herself would tell you that. So that's why when the party announced that hers was an interim appointment, the expectation was that somebody else would follow. Now,
5 months have passed and nothing has been done to put in place the mechanism by which you'll choose a full-term president. Absolutely nothing.
well, as far as the mechanisms are concerned, the way our party has worked so far, the working committee tends to come up with a name, as they did this time with Sonia Gandhi's, which tends to be endorsed by the AICC.
Is that the right way to do it?
Well, as you know, personally, and I stress I'm speaking purely of a personal opinion, I would have preferred an electoral outcome. I seem to be almost alone in the party in saying that an election, and with a slightly larger electoral college than the ICC, the PCC delegates added onto it, would give you about 10,000 voters. I think that would actually be the best way of actually electing a president, whether a member of the Gandhi family or not, in order, first of all, to energize the party machinery as well by involving everyone in determining the leadership of their own party, and secondly, in galvanizing some interest amongst the voters, because I think the voters would be captivated by an election in a party, just as we see in other in other democracies in the West.
These are brilliant reasons why Congress should have a full-fledged election to choose the next president. Why are your partymen reluctant to accept this idea?
As I said, I think mine is probably a minority view. I mean,
But why are they therefore?
Well, then you have to ask them who disagree with me.
But you must have asked yourself this question. After all, you are a party that functions in a country that is proud to call itself the world's biggest democracy, and yet within the party, democracy stops.
Within
Why?
all parties, Karan. Within all parties.
But let's be only concerned about Congress because you are the oldest party, and in a sense you set an example to others. Why are your senior leaders wary of, scared of, shy of, choose whatever verb you want, an election?
Well, it's a good question that you could, I'm sure, ask them. I mean, my own commitment to the party remains irrespective of the mechanisms that it chooses, but I have advocated one mechanism, and I've done so quite openly and unhesitatingly.
But when you talk to your colleagues, what explanation do they give for opposing your idea, which otherwise, as I keep saying, is exactly what a party should do?
Well, I think broadly speaking, the objections tend to be, one, the fear that it'll provoke divisions within the party, that it may create or intensify or entrench factionalism of one sort or another, that money power might start playing a role, that it may in fact produce lopsided results that will not give us a sufficiently broad-based party leadership, etc. There are various kinds of objections, some of which...
all of these objections could be applied to democracy in India itself. I mean, if you really believe that these are credible explanations, you ought not to be a democracy in India either.
Well, you asked me to think aloud as to what the objections to my ideas might be. My ideas remain my ideas, and I certainly do believe it would be very helpful if we were to have
Can
these.
I ask you this? Have you discussed the idea of an election to choose the new president with either Sonia and Rahul Gandhi? You must have. You must have.
Not recently. Let me put it this way. There have been earlier conversations when it was more of an academic issue.
But were they in support of the idea?
I think I would rather they spoke for themselves on this. Honestly, Karan, I think it's not right for me to start talking about private conversations or the content thereof in public.
Can I put this to you? People hearing you will say, is he not telling us what the Gandhis feel because he knows that they are against it and therefore this will seem as if they too are not democratic, that they don't want an open election?
I'm not telling you what other people feel because it's not my job to speak for them. I mean, honestly, I think this is a very reasonable position to take. I will give you my views anytime you ask for them. But I cannot and have no authority to speak for other people's views.
Let me put this to you. You have made it clear, and you made it clear repeatedly, that you believe an open, free, democratic election to choose the new president is exactly the mechanism that should be adopted.
Absolutely.
Should Congress at the same time also choose new members for the CWC and new general secretaries?
Absolutely. No, there's no question in my mind that that's what I was aiming for, was to revive the entire organizational structure.
And when you say new members for the CWC, would you also say that, as your constitution itself stipulates, at least 12 should be directly elected, 12 members of the CWC by the AICC, and not all of them nominated by the new president?
No, that's precisely the point I was making, so that the permanent invitees and special invitees would be brought in by the president to redress any balance. Let's say the election produces no women, for example. You would name women, nominate them as president, as invitees. Let's say that, and then in the end, the working committee, as I understand it, functions with no real distinction between the permanent elected members, rather, and the invitees.
You know what you're talking about, Shashi? Because as I hear you, you're talking of a fundamental overhaul of the Congress. A free,
No,
fair,
I'm talking
open,
more about energizing the party machinery, not a fundamental overhaul, because the basic structure of the party, for example, what I've seen in my state, we do have functioning booth committees, maybe not in 100% of the booths, but say 80 to 90% of them, closer to 90. We have functioning mandal committees, mandalam committees as we call them in Kerala, everywhere. Block committees, district committees. These are sought after positions, manned or staffed by hard-working, dedicated party workers. Our various frontals.
Kerala may be unique in that respect. I doubt very much whether this structure exists in other states.
So that's the model we need to energize throughout. There's nothing wrong with the model.
But that
I'm
itself,
not asking for an
even
overhaul
at
of
that
that.
limited level, it would be a fundamental overhaul of the way the Congress functions in UP, in Bihar,
Exactly.
or even for that matter, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh. This is something new and novel. Congress may have at some point in the past done it, but it hasn't done it, at least for the last 15, 20
I think in
years.
Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh it has. In fact, it's one of the reasons we won.
Certainly not in UP, certainly not in
But
Bihar.
UP and Bihar it hasn't. In fact, I think the person who first told me that was Rahul Gandhi himself. He said that, there are
again,
places where the office of the party doesn't exist in
But
some
again,
districts
he's
of UP.
aware
That has
of
to
the
change.
problem from what you're saying,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he did very little to rectify it.
No, of course he was trying to do something to rectify it, Karan.
What?
The only question is whether you do it from top down or whether you do it from bottom up.
But
And
either
I
way,
think
the process hasn't started. You've been lost or
you-
captivated by the debate. How do you begin? And do you do it from the top or from the bottom? But the actual starting hasn't happened.
the point is you need to bring everyone along. A party like the Congress will need to bring along old and young, traditionalists and experimenters, grassroots leaders and Rajya Sabha members. You'll have to have everyone coming along
Shashi
to
Tharoor,
make
it
these
sounds
things
to
work.
the audience as if Congress has 101 brilliant excuses for not acting. You've done all the thinking, but you haven't acted, and there are 1,001 excuses for not acting. That's why Congress remains inert.
Inert again is unkind. Look, I understand the frustrations of many, many people who feel that we could be doing more. And I can assure you that up and down in the party, there is a desire to do more, a desire to make
Why doesn't
more of
that
an
translate
impact,
into
desire to make more of a
action? Why
difference.
does desire remain desire?
That desire is being enacted. It's being enacted at different speeds in different places with different degrees of effectiveness.
glacial speed.
In some places.
Okay, let me put this to you. One of the problems that has bedeviled Congress, first as a debate, but now perhaps it's even become a division, is this question of the relative role of the old guard versus the new leadership. And clearly this is something a party needs to resolve. It cannot be allowed to continue because it is divisive, it is damaging. How is it to be resolved?
The only way to resolve it is by honestly having both. In other words, you cannot afford to do without the experience, the roots, the effectiveness of the old guard in many places, as has been demonstrated by Huda, by Amrinder Singh, by Kamal Nath and by others. And at the same time, you need to keep infusing new blood, new ideas, fresh faces, new energy into the party. The two are not mutually incompatible. You just have to keep
But when
them both
Ashok Tharoor was brought in as new blood in Haryana, and by the way, he was brought in after 2014, he was sacked before he could face his first election. He wasn't even given a chance to show how he would perform.
Well, the counter argument would be that he did lead the party in the Lok Sabha elections. And since those results had not gone as well as they might have, perhaps the perception was there was time for a change.
So on that basis, should you have sacked Kamal Nath and Gehlot as well?
Look, again, you're asking me questions that it's not my position
But
to
what I'm saying
determine.
is that the logic that is applied to explaining
No, I
Tanwar
think-
being removed could apply across the board. And
I-
it seems to me that the message that's going to the young leadership is that they're not going to be given a fair chance. You need to give people a chance to make a mistake, and they can only make a mistake when they have a test. But if you remove them before the test, it's not fair.
Well, look, in this particular instance, I think there were also very much local factors in the mind of the leadership. That when you have an alternative leader with an undoubted grassroots connect, a strong traditional support base, and who's an effective campaigner, you chose to go with him.
Then you shouldn't have removed him in the first place. Rahul was either wrong in bringing in Tanwar, or Sonia Gandhi was wrong in removing him.
But why can't you accept that different decisions can be made at different times? I mean, the fact is that...
Of course they can, but it's not a very satisfactory situation for a party that's trying to recover if you keep contradicting yourselves. You need to be consistent. You need to decide what you want to do and stick with it.
I don't know that in politics consistency is necessarily always a virtue.
But constantly changing your mind isn't a virtue either. Constantly changing your mind isn't a virtue either. You give mixed signals to people.
Well,
and you divide the party.
As John Maynard Keynes famously said, when the facts change, I change my mind, so what do you do?
But I'm not
so
sure
you are looking at the facts on the ground when you make
I'm not sure what facts change, because if you're going to change on the basis of the Lok Sabha results, then you should have been changing party presidents across the country. Because let's face it, there were 17 states where Congress got 0.
The fact is, again, that in each state the circumstances are different, the personalities are different, the options are different.
Quite right. Ashok Tanwar didn't find favor with the mother. The mother had replaced the son. It was time for the son's choice to go. That's as simple as that. That's a good explanation. I'll accept it.
That's not my explanation, Karan. I don't think that you're being very fair again in putting words into your interviewees'
No.
mouths.
I'm simply saying to you what people hearing this interview would say to themselves. Okay, let me come to the last part of this interview, because we've only got about 5 minutes left.
But you also seem to be implying a division between mother and son, which I'm not sure is really there. I think
Not sure?
No, I think
that's a very tentative way of saying it. I thought that's definitely not there. But if you say not sure, that suggests it might be.
No, I didn't suggest it might be. I'm just saying that you are implying something without which does not necessarily have any basis in reality.
I'm doing what you do, which is to play with your words.
All right, go ahead.
Let's come to the last part of this interview. In just over 3 weeks' time, I think I'm right in saying in 23 days, Parliament will convene.
That's right.
Congress didn't make a big impact on the country during the budget session. What are you going to do to ensure that this time around your performance in the Lok Sabha at least is more impressive?
Well, I would like to think that our performance was not that unimpressive. We opposed over...
Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary publicly questioned whether Kashmir had not been internationalized long ago. And Sonia and Rahul were left exchanging looks of horror, aghast. And he carried on. And even to this day, he hasn't accepted he made a mistake that embarrassed the party. That's your party leader.
But listen, you can't take one moment out of isolation, a moment that may have gone wrong, and discredit everything else we did. On that very debate, both Manish Tiwari and I in the Lok Sabha, and Ghulam Nabi Azad and P. Chidambaram in the Rajya Sabha spoke passionately and eloquently.
Unfortunately, neither of you lead the party in the Lok Sabha, and Mr. Chaudhary does.
But I mean, you do tend to focus a lot on leadership and positions and elections and so on. Let's also look at the content. I'm proud to say on every single bill that the BJP brought, mounted an intellectually coherent, ideologically consistent and effective set of arguments. And I'm proud to say I myself spoke in 17 debates. So you're saying that
you're very satisfied with the Congress's performance in the Lok Sabha in the last session?
I'm saying you cannot judge the effectiveness of the debate by the fact that the BJP was able to steamroll its bills through, because we don't have the numbers. It's one of the big flaws in the parliamentary system.
I'm judging the effectiveness of the debate from Congress's standpoint by the fact that on a critical issue, when the country was watching, your leader embarrassed the party, got his facts wrong. And facts that actually no Indian should ever get wrong, because it's imprinted in our mind that in fact Kashmir is an internal issue.
Yeah, I mean, he says he was misunderstood, and I don't really want to go into that, because the two designated speakers for the party in that debate were Manish and me, and we're the ones who spoke at some length. I think Adhir was using the prerogative of being a leader to ask a question or make a comment.
Perhaps he should be more restrained in future.
Well, I mean, again, you're asking me to comment for other people. It's not right.
Absolutely. I'm simply making a comment myself that in the interest of the party, it's possibly the case that the less we hear from your party leader in the Lok Sabha, the better the image the party will create. It's an odd paradox as a conclusion, and I know it's a bit unfair to your ears, but that is what many people say. Look, they do say that. I'm not making this up.
Look, the fact is that we do have, I believe, very effective, articulate Congress MPs, many with considerable experience, including Adhir, who have intervened effectively at many points in the budget session. For you to generalize that the Congress was not an effective opposition is palpably unfair. I think we will carry on in the same vein in the current session, in the forthcoming session. We will mount a principled opposition. We will do so having done our homework and prepared grounds on which to oppose. And at the end of the day, indeed the BJP's brute majority will unfortunately always prevail. That's the way in which the parliamentary system works.
Absolutely.
But our arguments will be heard and will be there and available on YouTube and for the nation
there's
to
nothing
see.
you can do about the fact that the BJP has a huge majority
Exactly.
with its allies a two-thirds majority. My main concern is that the voice of Congress should be articulated by those who have the command of the facts at their fingertips, who are good at presenting arguments, and in addition have a personality to attract attention. And you're assuring me that this will increasingly be the case when Parliament convenes in November.
I can't say increasingly. I think that we do divide speaking responsibilities amongst various MPs and so on, but certainly we have many who would be able to fill that particular bill. The party leadership, frankly, knows what it wants in the party structure, and I think I'll have to leave it there because I'm not part of the decision making.
I'm not going to question that the party leadership knows what it wants. Certainly it hasn't indicated that to the country. Maybe it knows in its mind what it wants, but let's not go into that. I'm going to come to my last question. Sonia Gandhi has created a think tank. The Times of India has reported that perhaps it comprises 11 or 12 people, and this think tank met for the first time yesterday, and its job is to define the party's position on critical issues that are of immediate and major importance. Now, you're a 3-time MP. You're the author of 17 books. You're a former Under Secretary General of the United Nations, and perhaps most importantly, you have a following of 7 million on Twitter. Why are you, Shashi Tharoor, not a member of this think tank?
How can I answer a question to which I don't know the answer myself, Karan?
But I mean, if the party sets up a think tank and a man known in the country as one of the best thinkers in the party is not a member of that think tank, people wonder, is this an attempt to deliberately exclude you?
Look, I'm always available to the party leadership whenever they need to consult me on anything. They know that, and I frankly don't like thrusting myself on anyone or anything. I'll do my job. I've been elected by the voters of Thiruvananthapuram to speak for them, and I hope I have some public, shall we say, audience that wishes to hear my views on various things. I'll continue expressing them, but I can't demand things that are not for any individuals to demand. If you want to be surrounded by certain people yourself, who am I to tell you that I should be with you when you clearly would like others? I mean, that's no common sense.
There's no doubt about the fact that you can't demand to be part of the think tank. Let me ask you a personal question. Were you disappointed not to be?
Look, I mean, I'm happy to make my contributions in whichever way the party finds useful.
But were you disappointed not to be?
If that's not a particular contribution they're seeking from me, there will be others.
Okay. It's sad that they haven't sought you because you could have added to the think tank enormously. But that, of course, is the prerogative of our party president. It simply raises one question in people's minds, that if this is the way in which the think tank is to be evolved and this think tank will define the party's positions, then Congress isn't marshalling the best talent it has at its fingertips.
I think it may well be a case of horses for courses. I mean, the people who've actually been elected to the Lok Sabha have a job to do there, and they've largely been excluded from this particular mechanism because presumably they're supposed to be busy working on those issues, preparing responses to bills, legislation, government policies, and so on.
That's an even more worrying conclusion that we come to. Largely people elected to the Lok Sabha have been excluded from the think tank. That sounds even more bizarre to people.
Look, I mean, we don't. All we know is what's in the media about what this group is supposed to do. Perhaps we misunderstood its nature and purpose. We'll see. We will no doubt at some point get some information. I've not seen a party circular about it. All I've read is the media reports that you yourself are citing.
Yes, and it met yesterday, Friday, for the first time. There's a report about that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Shashi Tharoor, a pleasure talking to you.
We learn a lot from the media. Thank you, Karan.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.